Okay, so we'll just start it off. Random question out of the blue. What are you having the most fun with right now at Spark Toro?
Ooh. Okay, so Jake, I run three companies, right? So SparkToro is one of them. Alert Mouse is another one. Not hasn't quite launched yet. That's like a Google Alerts alternative. And then Snack Bar Studio, which is making a game called the Snack Bar at the End of the World. Um,
Awesome.
I, Making a video game is so fun, dude. It's
Is
really,
that has that been the most fun you've had in a long
I
time then?
think I think it's incredibly joyful. It's such a creative process. It's software development, right? Which that's what I've done my whole life.
Yeah.
But in this unique consumer focused way, we're trying to do something that's very traditionally 1960s Italian with the game. The setting is so unique and historical. The recipes and ingredients are all true to life and authentic. There's lots of research as part of it. There's tons of, art and illustration and animation and music and sound effects and VFX. It is deeply, deeply enjoyable. And you know what else is lovely? Being able to use SparkToro
I
and
was just
all
gonna
the
ask.
audience research data, yeah, to be able basically to take the principles of digital marketing and all the things I've built to be able to think from a marketing first perspective about all the things that we build in the game to sort of optimize. Like the game has to be fun, obviously, but
Right.
it also has to reach an audience that will care about it. And SparkToro has been really fun for that.
Let's pull on that thread for a second. So, what are you finding, in this day and age of things are changing with SEO, paid media, blah blah. How are you using Spark Turo to market the game?
So right now it's a lot of what I would call strategic prep work. It, Jake, I look, a lot of people make the foolish mistake of thinking that product and marketing are two different things, and they are not. That is a recipe for disaster. If you build a product and then you try to figure out how to market it, you have already set yourself up for failure. There's counterexamples where people have succeeded. I'm not arguing that, but
Sure.
man, if instead you think strategically about what product am I building and who's it going to appeal to and why will that audience amplify it before you build the thing and as you're building the thing, your chances of success go way higher. And that's what I'm using SparkToro to do. We're not marketing Snack Bar at all yet because we did research to figure out that acquiring wish lists, essentially people saying, I want this game and I'm going to wish list it on Steam or Nintendo Switch Store or whatever. If you acquire those people more than a year before the game comes out, they get frustrated, they forget about you, they get annoyed when they get the update and the game finally releases. And so we're doing no marketing until we are absolutely 100% confident that the game is less than a year from launch.
Wow.
But but we do tons of things inside the product of the game. What do the recipe illustrations look like? Which recipes are we picking? What regions of Italy are we going to feature as the biomes where the character can go? What sorts of stories are we telling in the game? All of that stuff focuses on an audience that we believe is most likely to not just play the game, but amplify the reach of the game. That's a
Perfect.
big
Yeah,
difference.
that's a huge difference. And so many of our students, it's their first time kind of being exposed to digital marketing. Talk to me a little bit what you mean by kind of amplified, how you're kind of baking this into the product experience.
Yeah, yeah. So if you think of sort of the group of people that you need to market to as a Venn diagram, there's like the big, big circle of all the people who might potentially be in the universe of whatever field you're in, right? If you're making cosmetics, it's nearly all women and lots of men, and, right? Like it's
Yeah.
huge, everybody, everybody. But then there's, oh, well, our cosmetic product is specifically for this type of audience. Like, I don't know, it's for goth teenagers. And so like, okay, that's a much smaller world. And then there's the much smaller world of these are the people we think are likely to be the first buyers of the product.
Hmm.
But outside the Venn diagram of customers and potential customers, there's the group of people who influence those customers who might never buy it. Think of
Hmm.
like the people who write articles for Marie Claire and Vogue and
Sure.
whatever the TikTok influencers. Granted, maybe TikTok influencers they might actually buy the product too, but there's plenty of people who influence that group who are not buyers, and you need
Yes.
to reach them as well. And so part of your product and marketing has to be how are we reaching that group of people? When we're creating stuff for Snack Bar, we're thinking about who writes about games, who talks about games, who amplifies games, who's going to interview us, what podcasts can we get on, how do we make national news with it, right? How do we get it so that anyone who's doing Italian travel content is also like, hell yeah, you know what? This is kind of fun and interesting. I'm not a gamer, but that's who it is. I'm not a gamer, but, and they're going to talk about it. We want to make sure that we appeal to that group as well as the I'm a games journalist. Why should I write about this game instead of all the other 1,000 games on my list to write about? We need to have hooks that will catch those people's attention and make them interested to write. So,
Awesome. Let me throw you a curveball here. How would you do this 5 years ago versus today if you didn't
mm,
have Spark Toro? Like just to draw the contrast between this kind of zero click world. Maybe we should explain what zero click means and kind of how you're approaching it with this new
yeah.
age.
So there, basically 5 years ago, there was still considerable opportunity to directly drive traffic from sources of influence on the internet back to your website and then convert them. So you could almost think of like, whatever, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Reddit, Google searches, YouTube, all of these channels where you would potentially influence people, even TikTok. You could catch their attention and then with a link in your profile or a link in the post, drive them back to your website. An email could be, hey, here's this email, but then here's the link to our website. And the behavior that most people were used to and that most platforms enabled, granted, this is more true 10 years ago than 5 years ago, and way more true 5 years ago than today.
Right.
The behavior was that's normal. That's that's a great way to do marketing because the platforms enable that and sort of make that possible. Today, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, every single platform, all the AI tools, of course, they've all realized, right? They sort of sat around the boardroom like, hey, do you guys want to make more money next quarter? Let's send less traffic to all the people who are posting links on our platform and force everyone to just stay addicted to our feed, like stay in our platform rather than leaving it to go somewhere else. So Google answers all your queries right inside Google rather than sending you right off to a third. I think it's right around 60% of all searches end without a click today.
Mhm.
Facebook sends out very little traffic. ChatGPT sends out like less than 0.1% of all its traffic. Um, TikTok sends out like 0.1% of all traffic, or very few people click on a profile and then go there. And so the only way to really drive traffic from any of these places is with advertising.
Right.
And of course, because the advertising is so attractive and appealing, the people with the highest margins and the largest profits and the biggest ad budgets all throw billions and billions of dollars at these ad platforms, which means there's no competitive advantage there. And generally speaking, you're going to spend 99 cents for every dollar of margin that you're making. So it's extremely unprofitable to invest in digital advertising on most major platforms in direct ways. And this zero click phenomenon means organic marketing that used to drive traffic back to your website is also, nearly impossible to compete in. So there's only one solution: zero click marketing, right? You have to do essentially what a billboard on the highway does, what a
Mm.
radio or television ad did in 1965, right? Which is here's the message. I'm going to put it in a place where I believe people will pay attention and then count on them if they're interested to follow up with an action that I will never be able to track.
Yes.
And that's key,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
CFOs and CEOs and private equity investors and public markets and boards of directors, they hate untrackable advertising,
Yes.
despise it. You
Yes.
can't prove to me that this ad drove these clicks, which resulted in these purchases, then you're not allowed to invest. And
Yes.
what's beautiful about that is that means it's an area for getting a competitive advantage as a small or medium business or an independent operator who doesn't need to care about reporting to a CFO. You know your shit works,
Yeah.
so you invest in it.
Okay. There's a lot of ways we could go.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to that. So with Spark Toro, you're having sound like you're super. I mean, it's really interesting having Spark Toro to kind of build these other tools. But really quick, if you'd humor us, would you mind our cases? We're going to look at a Gen Z company going after Gen Z female consumers in jewelry. Because fictitious coming, and they've got kind of a traditional like Gen X audience. So let's say you in this new zero click world, if I was to hand that to you, all right, Rand, you're our head of marketing. Could you pop open the hood on Spark Toro and kind of maybe walk us through how you would tackle something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can like go into the tool directly.
Yeah,
Um, I, just one thing I would say first, Jake, is
sure.
I think you and I both know that the delimiters that the media has defined for generations are arbitrary and useless.
Yes.
And so whenever someone says, "Hey, we're targeting Gen Z, we're targeting Gen X," I one of two things is true. They're using it as a shorthand to mean a rough age range, but then there's lots of other details and demographics that they know about, but or they're a moron. I, I shouldn't. That's not fair. They are ignorant of how useless those terms are and how meaningless it is, right? So, like, if you are born in 1980 versus 1981, do you have dramatically different behaviors and demographics? Are your interests and like all these kind of things massively different? And is that much more different than 81 and 82,
Right.
or
Yeah.
whatever the delimiter is for? Is the Gen what is it, millennial versus Gen Z
Gen
cutoff
X.
is like
Yeah.
2000 or something? Like,
Yeah.
is being born in 99? Oh, you're nothing like someone born in 2000,
Yeah.
but you're much more like someone born in 1981. What? That's
Yeah.
the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And there's no data to show that those particular generation markers, with the exception of baby boomer, right? So the baby boomer generation had a unique set of post-war economic and social
Right.
and cultural standards, much more carefully defined because there was so little media that they were relatively exposed to compared to the rest of people alive today. And so that 1950 to 65 generation is like a true generation with generational markers and lines. And every other generation since is a bunch of baloney and no one should ever use it. And if someone says Gen Z to you, you can say, well, that's a fake word. It means nothing. You might as well have said, "Oh, the Ishkabibble generation." Yeah, useless. Great.
Yeah.
But the other reason that it's really important that I'm ranting and raving about this is because it's so crucial to pick if you're trying to market to an audience. It is so crucial to say we are X for Y
You're
and not
right.
X
Okay.
for Z or A or B. And so, if you say to me, "Hey, we're targeting female Gen Z consumers," right? I just take that to generally mean young women, which
Hmm.
is a fine, like, broad thing. But I would say get as hyper specific as you possibly can. Don't say we are marketing to all young women.
Right.
Like,
Right.
can you narrow to geography? Can you narrow to interest groups? Can you narrow to behavioral data? Can you say, oh, well, these women tend to have these other four behaviors that are consistent across that group? That's the first group we're going to market to. And we're going to start by marketing to folks on the West Coast. Boom, you have already massively improved your odds of success.
Love it. Love that. I think that's a great distinction. And for using the tool, does it matter when you type in some of these phrases into Spark Toro as it goes to build these audiences? Not to like lead the witness
Well,
here.
yeah. Do you want me to show it now or I'll show it during the class?
If you want to show it now, it'd be great.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, because we're going to build a persona off of using some Spark Toro data, which would be great to watch you kind of as a power user yourself, how you kind of tackle it.
Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Boom, boom, boom. All right, why don't I share that guy there? Okay. You are seeing my
Yeah,
Spark Toro
perfect.
there? Okay,
Perfect. Yes.
great, great, great. So if you are already hyper sure of your audience and their very particular group, you can say, hey, we know that we're searching for people who search for, I don't know, emerald jewelry, California, you know, right? Like this,
Yeah.
that's way too specific. That's not the correct thing, but you can do that. This would be people who basically they go to Google and they type this search phrase. And if you know that that's your group, but you might also say, oh, well, we already have a website. We're just going to put in our website here. You could say, oh, we know we're targeting people who have software engineer in their bio,
Hmm.
right? And that's who we're going after. Um, you could have a specific URL, like they visit this particular page on our jewelry website. Or what I would recommend in the case where you have broad demographics is a describe your audience. And this
Yes.
is where, Jake, you can just type as much detail as you want about exactly the audience. So you could, you know, you can tell me, oh, it tends to be young women. They are between the age of X and Y. They live in these regions. They have these behaviors. They tend to like this type of whatever cosmetic product or jewelry or clothing. Their style tends to be this or that. And SparkToro will, using large language models, basically send a send that data over to an LLM. I
Hmm.
think we're using ChatGPT's 4.0 right now,
Okay.
and then return back associated behaviors that we can turn into a measurable audience.
Perfect. This is fascinating. I was curious how some of the underpinnings worked. So what we're going to do as part of the experiment is we're going to basically take all this down, and there's ability where you can download this out of SparkToro, which is pretty cool.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we're going to build a custom GPT off of all that downloaded data that we can get out of here, which is amazing. And then we're going to try and queue up as if we're talking to a persona just to see what happens when it has some of that
Yeah.
data.
So you can see here's a fun example in consumer world, like people seeking alternatives to D&D, right? So I
Yeah.
entered like longtime Dungeons and Dragons players who are looking for alternative tabletop games that they want to try and they're willing to experiment and that kind of stuff. And and then SparkToro is making that query over to the large language model, getting the behavioral data back, and then analyzing based on those behaviors. When I say behaviors, what I mostly mean is the websites that they're visiting and LinkedIn profiles that are likely to match that group. We use LinkedIn as our primary demographic source because it contains so much rich demographic data publicly. And so
Hmm.
then you can see like this group of people, no surprise, right? That marketing folks, writers, computer gamers, people in entertainment tend to be the ones who are role-playing game players, right? D&D players and alternative seekers. I love this because if you ask for D&D players, you will see that they're mostly male. But if you look for people who want alternatives to D&D, they're slightly more women and non-binary.
That's fascinating. I saw that. That surprised me too. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so comparing these types of things is fascinating. And then you can see like, what platforms they're using more and less than average. So YouTube and Reddit are number 1 and 2, which is no surprise. Reddit is huge for this group. So is YouTube. Google and Reddit are number 1, 2 for search and AI tools. But then, there's, well, they don't use a lot of Yahoo. That doesn't surprise me. Uh, ChatGPT, like the LLM tools for this are not high at all.
Wow.
A lot of times,
Interesting.
you'll see LLMs in the top 10, even the top 5 sometimes for some groups of users, but they're nowhere here. That doesn't totally surprise me as somebody who like knows this field a little bit, but that type of data I think is fascinating because it tells you where to go do your marketing, where to
Right.
invest if you're going to do advertising, your ad dollars, where to avoid, where to learn. Like these Reddits are going to be super useful, and I'll show you the specific subreddits down below. But then
Perfect.
there's websites that they visit, which include, again, since I'm familiar with this world, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense that these are the places where you would go to get that type of stuff, as opposed to like whatever the official D&D Beyond website or the other things that are popular with D&D folks specifically. And then YouTube channels where they talk about it, podcasts where you could find these games, topics that are likely going to be of interest. So those topics could be useful to you if you're trying to think about, well, what are people typing into AIs or what searches, what content might it create? And like I mentioned, subreddits, social accounts.
Wow.
Yeah,
So, I
lots
mean,
of data.
yeah, really quick. without getting too much into the weeds, tell me a little bit how it knows or how SparkToro is kind of doing this. So it's passing. I'm curious for the data source and how it's kind of driving these conclusions.
Yes, great question. So basically, what happens here is with the query that you perform, whatever that is, SparkToro has access to essentially it's sort of four-ish data sources. The big two are clickstream data. So
Mm,
clickstream is essentially a profile of people who've connected like their phone or their desktop machine, laptop, or whatever. Um, they've opted into a data collection methodology that anonymizes and aggregates all their clicks. And Datos, which is our clickstream provider, has about 10 million devices in the US, which
wow.
is, a huge number. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
it's obviously
yeah,
only, maybe 2 or 3% of all the devices in the US. So it's not like measuring everyone's internet behavior, but absolutely it's a representative sample. And
sure.
then through that clickstream data, we basically pass behaviors and Datos sends us back like, oh, well, we know that, this group visits YouTube more or less than the average American user and this much more. And we can tell you that they're the most, if you rank all the social networks that are on the internet, this is number one, this is number two, this is number three, this is number four for this particular audience, right? For this group of people. And then the same thing for search and AI tools, the same thing like for websites. For
Makes sense.
websites, we do a unique thing where we look at not just more or less than average, but compared to all users, how much
Mm,
more popular is a given site. And that's why these ones pop out because
okay.
they're very uniquely used among this particular audience. And that powers a lot of other things. We do collect our own data about podcasts, about subreddits, about YouTube channels, social accounts, and we marry those data pieces up. We do the same thing with keyword data that we get from
Mm,
Google searches. We get that from Market Muse,
okay.
and then we have our own crawling system for subreddits and social accounts. So
In
we
building this, what was the hardest data set to kind of get around and like make sure that it was quality and getting good results?
you, there's a few that we had to give up on that was really interested in. One of them was events. I really, really wanted to be able to show conferences and events in
Yeah,
here, but unfortunately the data is so unstructured, it's so randomized, there's no consistent good place to get it. Google has an events search. We have some ideas of how we might be able to like with some LLM magic make that happen eventually, but we're very I want to be clear. Like, so Topics, for example, uses LLM data. Like, we make an LLM call and we send it the data that we've got about this audience and then collect back, sort of this information about affinity and saturation. And, these look good because they tend to be good because the LLM is really good at pattern matching.
sure.
But I am really nervous, Jake. I'm really nervous about making that too much of the product. For
Mm,
example, you could ask an LLM, hey, what events are popular with this group?
right.
And an LLM is going to give you the stereotype answers, not the real answers. It's going to give you the events and conferences that come up most in its training data set, which might be defunct. They might be happening in different cities. Like it'll hallucinate. The accuracy is around 90%. If you see one thing that's wrong here,
Yeah.
you're going to immediately distrust the data versus an LLM where you're like, yeah, I know it's wrong 10% of the time. Like that's just the price of doing business. So we try and stay away from LLM data because we're trying to provide something that is provable. Like if you
Yes.
ask the method, how do you know that the Poker Go podcast is so popular with this group? It's about poker. It's not about D&D. It's not about role-playing games. Like, why is it so popular with this group? And then you go and you look at the profiles of all the people, who are rating that podcast or like listening to that podcast on Apple or YouTube or wherever, and you look at what else they watch and listen to, and you're like, oh, dang, there's a huge overlap between alternative role playing game players and poker players. And that's why the Poker News podcast is also there. Like,
It's fascinating. Yeah, these like yeah,
it's real data instead of like concocted data.
right. And as we say, all data is dirty. And there's no, and LMs are probabilities. So I think that makes a huge amount of sense.
Yeah.
Really quick, now you scan through a bunch of stuff. given 25, we're old, Rand, 20, 25 years in digital. Walk me through how you would think about kind of a go-to-market strategy with the game without giving away any secret sauce here ideas. But if you're scanning through this and you're like, okay, I got to put together a 45-day kind of launch plan,
Yeah.
maybe just a stream of consciousness as you scroll through the page and what you would think about and just riff live, if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah. So I like looking right at the top here. We have like a whole bunch of demographic data. I find the broad demographic data to be more useful for what we talked about in terms of like product design
Hmm.
stuff, especially for B2C. When it's B2B, that demographic data, especially like employer data, job role and title data, that stuff is priceless, like absolutely invaluable to know that your sales target for your enterprise SaaS software has this title, this role, these years of experience. They're at these companies, they went to these colleges. That's awesome. But for B2C, it's more like I like geography data, right? Like
Sure.
this sort of tells me, okay, where more or less than average people are. I like some bioprofile terms sometimes, but like again, this is more B2B. Gender and age broadly useful to me because it tells me I do not need to appeal to a much older crowd. Another interesting point, if you look at D&D players, there's a way over indexing on the upper age limit. So
Interesting.
D&D players older, but those people seeking alternatives younger,
Younger. Because you don't want to
younger.
play your parents' game, right? Maybe.
That is exactly right. And again, like a lot of people would assume this is all men. I love when the gender data like shows, hey, if I'm crafting my ad campaign or my homepage and I'm like, okay, on the homepage, I'm gonna put, I don't know, like muscly dude with a big sword and like, girl in a bikini, uh, like they did in the 1970s for this stuff.
Yes.
That's a terrible flippant idea. Like not just for sexism reasons, but also because you're missing out on a huge swath of your potential player market here. I,
Yeah, it
yeah,
lends itself to create. This is actually a perfect, what we're going to talk about in class. It's a perfect segue. Is like we're going to start with the customer, and then we're going to pick the camp. What do we use for digital channels and what we work? And we always like, let's start customer first, and then also who are our most valuable customers? Because maybe they buy and they ask for refunds all the time. We don't really want, that's kind of the missing piece post purchase. That's a lot of what we're going to talk about here as well, which is I think the art and the science with the numbers that come in. But
yeah,
let's keep going here for a second. Is there any
yeah,
other? Well, maybe last next two features like, oh man, because of this drives this kind of creative insight.
yeah. Well, so strategic at that strategic level of like, where am I going to invest my time? To me, I'm putting like almost all my social media eggs in the YouTube Reddit buckets.
Yeah.
Like Twitch looks interesting and Discord too, right? Twitch is like
Yeah.
way higher than average, but it's still number 12. Like
Yes.
it's pretty back there. Discord, yes, these people use it. Discord marketing is really hard because you basically like have to build your own channel on Discord and then drive traffic to it some other way. There's not a lot of Discord opportunities. You could try and find other people's Discords and then like get into those groups, but they tend to be private, all that kind of stuff. But I'm not sure I would spend like I'm not spending a bunch of time on LinkedIn or Quora or TikTok or Twitter. Like YouTube and Reddit are going to be where I'm going to put my energy and attention. I really like Reddit up here in particular because
Yes.
Reddit is so big and plus 20%. Reddit's rarely in the top 5 social networks used. So the fact that
Wow.
it is for this group tells me that is hugely valuable. I should invest time and energy going into that. And then I would go and I'd look at what subreddits are popular and what are those people talking about, and like, oh look, here's a subreddit with uh 286,000 followers. It's the creative writing one. Huh, I wonder if I could like play some alternative stuff into the creative writing community. I should see what sorts of submissions are accepted there. I should see what kinds of people are popular there. What are the comments like? What, like, you go spend time in those subreddits and you learn those communities, and then you figure out whether you can participate in them, in exciting and interesting ways.
And
Um,
are you seeing people once they identify a subreddit, which is again a deep Easter egg, are they going in and scraping those LLMs and building voice and tone to drive creative and landing page stuff? Or
you can.
Or are they just running ads on that? Or are they just trying to participate as a community member? I guess there's different spectrums
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
there's so many different things. So I think learning the language is great, right?
Yeah. How to
Like
target market.
learning
Yeah.
to speak the way this group, right? This looking for group, like if you go here, you will almost certainly find a whole bunch of language where you're like, what the hell does that mean? And then
Yeah.
you learn what it means, and then you can write that way. Right now, you can have a
Yes.
page that speaks to that group in that way, and like magic, right? Like it's a big
Yeah.
deal to be able to speak the language your customers speak. This is the same thing. If you go to the digital marketing subreddit, you'll see a bunch of words and phrases where you're like, what the flip does
Yeah.
that mean if you're not in digital marketing? And then you
Right.
learn the language, right? And you and I know it because we've had 25 years in it or whatever, but the layperson doesn't know it. So I think that's a great use case. I think participating in those communities and getting like your profile known and recognized as being like useful and valuable without marketing your stuff, that's great. That
Yes.
worked very well for me. I do a bunch of this. Let me see if I can find my. So I submit stuff. This is wild to
Oh, I
me.
love this. This is one of my favorite threads.
Let me show you my profile. I'm one of the rare people who's actually myself on Reddit. Like I just have me. I'm actually in there. Okay, so here you go. This only got 100 upvotes. That seems really small. It did not. I'm showing a bunch of like data from SparkToro and
Yeah.
Datos, blah blah blah. Look at that. Do you see that? 97,000. Do you know how expensive it is to get 100,000 people to look at your data?
I'm just thinking about cost per impression on an ad platform to try and get 100,000 people to get impressed. I mean, it's like, yes, that's awesome.
You know what happens when I post these? Journalists pick it up. Journalists find these graphs and they go and they talk about, right? Like these graphs get embedded and then they write articles about it. The you know, and I can see like where it's coming from and the upvote ratio and da da da.
Wow.
Really,
That's a,
man.
yeah.
Yeah.
The term growth hacking, which was so hot 10, 15 years ago. I mean, this is kind of like
And
the
I
idea.
found it, right? I found data is beautiful because it was in the list of what people who talk about market research and I think I did market research and audience research was my audience. It was
Yeah.
like in the top five, inside
Yeah.
SparkToro. So of course I'm going to submit, of course I'm going to submit it. It just makes tons of sense. And I do this with a lot of our stuff, like just getting, oh, Reddit had an error, but like just getting our stuff in here. I will submit stuff to digital marketing. I'll submit it to, you know, uh, the indie gaming thing. I submitted our video game funding,
Yeah.
and yeah, that worked out really well. Let me see if I can find that one. That one was nuts. Oh yeah, I did the breakdown of how Americans searched in 2024. Uh,
This
okay.
is super cool. How do you use Spark Toro to market Spark
Yeah,
Toro?
yeah, like it shows you the thing. There we go. So this post, I mean, a third of a million views. It's I have a link in here. You would have thought like no one can succeed with a link on Reddit, but it showed 1.9 million game developers our post about our fundraising for Snack Bar Studio.
Wow.
Great. Again,
Very cool.
journalists picked it up, like people in the games world picked it up. I got invited to a couple of games podcasts to talk about this funding model. It's like you're doing creative things, and that's what SparkToro is all about. It's all about showing you opportunities and then you execute on them in the ways that you want. SparkToro is not saying go here and do this. It's
Now, this is an
saying
important distinction, I think, a lot of times, because people use these SaaS tools. I don't care if it's SEMrush or whatever. They think this is exactly the keyword volume, and I'm always like, no, 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 no. Yeah, it's not prescriptive; it's descriptive.
yes, yes, it's telling you here are behaviors and demographics about this audience. Now it's up to you to go do smart marketing to reach those people in the places they pay attention.
Amen.
Without
No,
that,
here, here.
without that answer of like, where do these people pay attention?
Yeah,
You're lost. Like keyword
totally
research is
lost.
a great example. If you, well, SparkToro has some keyword research data, right, from market views that I mentioned.
Yes.
We're not really an SEO tool, but you can see in here, yeah, let's go like volume instead of affinity. It's Bardic colleges. This is the dorkiest search I could have possibly done. Like
That's
I, my nerd credentials just skyrocketed. But
I'm totally in the dark, by the way, so I have to confess my ignorance on but it sounds
I
nerdy.
think, there's like types of characters you can play in RPGs, and Bard is one of them, and a
Okay.
college is a kind of Bard. The nerdery goes so deep, like you can't imagine, Jake. Um, but
It's a great illustrative example, not to interrupt for a second. It's a great illustrative example of like if I was to go after this and I'm marketing a product or to a community I don't understand, I could go type that in and have an LLM educate me on why this is important.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly, right. So you can ask those questions, like you can jump over to Google and be like, "What? Someone please." Oh, there you go. Someone please explain Bardic colleges to me. Perfect, beautiful.
yeah.
Um, but this is essentially saying like this group of people searches for all these kinds of things. Best rated board games for adults. Oh dang, what a great search. I should completely go after that. And in fact, I could then click it and analyze exactly the audience who only searches for that keyword and go really deep on that group because I'm like, yes, that's my people. That's who I want to go. Right. You
Yeah.
can choose to do that. But keyword research is just one kind of audience research. And it
Yes.
always pissed me off that every other kind of audience research was not used by digital marketers. Like
Mm.
I don't even know of another tool where it's like, hey, what YouTube channels does my audience subscribe to?
Oh yeah.
Where, like, for the last 25 years, where could you get that?
Oh no, you couldn't.
You
And what I love
couldn't.
about with this is if you're doing customer development and you're interviewing customers and you can record the conversations with their permission, you can boot up and say, "Hey, have you familiar with these 5 YouTube channels?" And if you do 10 interviews and 9 out of 10 say, "Oh, I follow that channel for sure," boom, now we're taking qualitative in field with. But if you're starting cold, um, yeah. So I
Well,
love
and
that.
even then, maybe you can get like 5 channels that way.
Right,
Right?
right, yeah.
But
But there's a bunch, yeah,
yeah, I want 100 channels. I want to go after the mid market and like the guys who have 40,000 subscribers or whatever it is, not the millions of subscribers. I'm never going to be able to get these people to cover my little thing, but I bet I can get, yeah, sure.
Ace Hardware probably wouldn't, but
Yeah, Ace Hardware. I
yeah,
love how varied this is too, because
yeah.
a lot of people go in here and they're like, oh, Starbucks, that's not helpful to me. It's not supposed to be. We're not telling you this is where you should do your marketing. We're saying the Starbucks YouTube channel is surprisingly more popular with this group than average. And in
Yeah.
fact, you're getting like outside these top few, you're not getting a ton of play. Dr. Lupo, that looks interesting. Video from Space looks interesting. Maybe the PC World one, Wowhead, right? But like, I'm not
It's
sure.
the yeah, but here's the long tail kind of visualized, and we can
Yeah.
start to see what's there. And then I think what's really fascinating, the research on the mega influencer versus kind of the middle to mini influencer. I mean, the chance to reach and work with them, and if you're managing a budget, because nothing's free on the internet, I think that idea of working with some of these, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I try to, I'd go look for like which ones are hyper relevant. They're not too popular to where I couldn't like possibly get on them. Or if they are super popular, buy ads. Like don't try to pitch them, right? Just
Yeah,
buy ads
buy
against them.
ads.
Put them in
Yeah,
your
but
Google Ads account, right? Like there you go.
100%. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah. Wow. Um, well, we could go deeper on this. I have a couple other questions I'd love to fire off on you, a little bit bigger picture, zooming out for a second.
Okay, sorry. The Glass Cannon podcast,
Yes, keep going for a second. Yeah.
this actually sounds perfect. This might be my first target
Okay.
because it's got so it has 4,500 reviews, 4.9 stars. I am going to guess it is quite popular. They're producing episodes almost every day, and they're talking about games that are alternatives to like this. I haven't seen a more perfect marketing target than this in all the data that we just looked at. So,
Okay, walk us
right.
through. Pretend I don't know anything. What perks your ears up at this one? Is it just based on the ratings, the frequency of publishing?
Yeah, frequency of publishing, ratings, like quantity of ratings and strength of ratings. The fact that they have very long episodes that are clearly getting listened to, and then they talk about games, for example, not knowing what D&D is. You probably would not know what Pathfinder is, but Pathfinder is a popular alternative to D&D. So when I
Okay.
see that in here, there's a bunch of words I don't know. I don't know what Strange Eons is. I don't know what Campaign 2 is. I don't know what Gatewalkers is. But I recognize enough things in here to tell me this looks hyper relevant. And it's not too big, right? Like
Right.
it's not like so popular that I have no chance of getting on it. So I like
And
that.
now, let's close the loop on that. Would you wing an email in to them and see if you can go on the podcast? Would you, what would be how would you work off that data?
I would almost certainly, for me, I would go, who are the guys who run this? Glass Cannon podcast. Okay, great. They've got a network, so I could get in touch with them. Oh, it looks so dorky. This is amazing. Um, cute. Okay, so I would go try and find some of the people behind this podcast on LinkedIn. I know that's weird, but I would find them on LinkedIn and see who I know who knows them, and then I would ask for an intro.
Uh,
I That's my like personal cheat code,
sure. Yeah.
right?
Versus
But
spamming them directly. Yeah.
yeah, I would be like, and I have like a little bit of geek cred. I was on the official Dungeons and Dragons podcast that the makers Mattel, is it Mattel or Hasbro? I think it's Hasbro. Like Hasbro has like their, big thing. I was on that once, right? Like I'd be like, "Hey, can you intro me and include that I was on the, like that kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah. There
thing."
you go. Yeah.
Here's my connection to it. I believe a lot in the founder market fit. Like I would not start a company where I have no founder market fit, and I wouldn't recommend that to anyone else either. But once you have a little bit of that founder market fit, like then you can get, warm intros to places that can provide opportunities for you.
And are you looking for a slot to speak? Are you looking to run ads or all the above?
I I'd probably be angling for an opportunity to be on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Definitely.
if they were like, "Oh yeah, I'm not sure how relevant it is," I'd be like, "Okay, do you guys take ads? Do you
Yeah.
do sponsorship? Like I see you have live events. Is there, then I would start with the organic, then I'd drop to the paid."
Pay. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is perfect because many of the students are half the class wants to start their own company. So these types of like 0 to 1, how you get stuff moving, build the brand, which I think is really interesting too. When you look at how LLMs pick you up a little bit, is there a lot of data about the brand on the internet it's been trained on, and if you show up in podcasts or
This, oh my God, I cannot tell you. So here, I'll show you Alert Mouse real quick.
oh
Oops.
cool,
So this is my Alert Mouse. This doesn't exist yet. So like it's only I have it, but
yes,
but it's supposed to launch soon. So like I measure where I get mentioned, right? And it shows me over time, like, hey, here's all my, I'm going to ignore the spam ones. Um, I, like it will show, hey, Rand got all these mentions. Remember that data is beautiful Reddit submission? That's this.
boom, yeah,
That's that huge day, September 3rd, when I got like tons and tons of mentions. And we call the like big media mentions big cheese, right? But like
yeah,
it is showing me, hey, here's where Rand is getting talked about. And then I can look in here and see what words and phrases I am frequently being associated with. And that is what LLMs say about me. That's what Google says about me. And so essentially, like you're seeing that, if I can get um, myself more associated with digital marketing data and marketing leadership. I get invited to more conferences. I get asked to go on more podcasts. And then I use the podcast to talk about the audience research that SparkToro provides, right? And then SparkToro and audience research become associated. And if you go to, whatever, ChatGPT and say like, what are the best audience research tools on the web? Like SparkToro almost always when I type this comes up in the top three, which is great, right? And it does that because audience research tools and SparkToro are like,
yeah. Associations are there.
yep,
The
they get
training
they
data
get
is on the internet.
co-mentioned on
Yeah,
documents across the web, including, boy, it's really taking, oh, because it's using the thinking model. You don't have to think about it.
I should know that.
But right, like you can see in here that SparkToro, which has a ton of mentions, those are the hush ones. Like it gets associated with these words and phrases because all the posts about it, right? From, everybody from social media influencers to news sources and people who cover data and Reddit and, posts on all these places and all podcasts that I do, like they all mention it, and that reinforces it. Let's see. My goodness.
I know I was demoing this the other day. It was like so painful.
It's confused. All right. Well, that's all right. Yeah. So, Jake, I know we're coming to the end of our time here, but if there's other stuff that we wanted to cover,
Yeah, in the last few minutes, I have a kind of a question,
yeah, sure.
which is interesting, more to help the next generation here. So imagine you're 28 or 30, you're coming out with an MBA, or you're thinking of starting a company. We're seeing all sorts of data coming back on that first 5 years out of school. People just can't find jobs. This is a bigger question, but what exactly would you think about kind of the next 12 months to kind of stand out and as a marketer in an AI driven world?
Yeah. I think there is no substitute for becoming a passionate and well-known expert in a very specific thing. And I say very specific, like for example, when I dropped out of college, but when I dropped out of college, I got very well known for doing SEO, right? Search engine
Well,
optimization.
that's when I started running across your work years and years and years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah, we randomly met in a coffee shop in Seattle just because I knew you from YouTube. And I was like, hey, you probably don't know me, and you probably has that all the time, but like, by the way, Beginner's Guide to SEO was like changed my life. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, that which like that's amazing. I'm super honored to hear it. But like my point is that in the early 2000s, getting known in the SEO world was quite easy,
Mm,
relatively speaking. I'm
right.
not saying that like whatever, anyone can do anything, but the broad field of SEO today is so crowded. There's so many players. It would be nearly impossible to become like broadly known for SEO. Like that's incredibly hard. That'd be like becoming the most popular travel influencer in the world. Like someone's going to do it, but
The probability of
man,
you being that one
yeah,
is, yeah.
so insanely hard.
Right, right.
Bring it down a level. Like I'm really good at SEO for B2B SaaS. Okay, easier, much easier. What if you're really good at, I am the world's premier expert in brand marketing for through PR for healthcare companies.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
you are very, very specific. I don't even know one person who's doing that. I can't
Yes.
name them. You can build a
Yes.
brand there. You can become that person. And the same is true in any space you want to talk about, right? Like if you pick a very popular sector that like tons of people are trying to build their, profiles on Instagram and TikTok for, doom. Like that is doom. But you pick a hyper specific one where it's hard to even name a person going after that. That's my like secret tip.
Love that. And conversely, when you do achieve internet fame, like you have, what is there any dark sides to that, or is there
Oh,
anything?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and
Is there anything, I guess, like you think about? I wish I could divorce, or I wish I could just be anonymous now, or is there
um,
any, like, do you
I,
ever have those days like that, or?
so somewhat intentionally over the last few years, my profile has been declining in terms of like broad reach and popularity somewhat. And that is both because it's very hard to maintain. It's time consuming and intensive to maintain that. And also the benefits are primarily to my ego, not my bank account or company success. And
Yeah,
so I'm trying to be more thoughtful about, am I doing this because I need to see my name in lights, or am I doing this because it's really useful for my business? I want to be clear that everything marketing and relationship building and connection and getting invited on a podcast or like having someone answer your emails or whatever, that all gets way easier if your profile is even a little bit known.
right,
If you look semi-credible, you're connected to other people in the industry on LinkedIn, like you have a few thousand to tens of thousands of followers on social, you stand out from the crowd of like anonymous spammer who's emailing people.
right.
So everything else gets easier. But you have to weigh whether, whether it's worth the grind. I don't know if you've read stories of like, I know a few people who built considerable social profiles, and it's like multiple hours every day just to maintain and try and grow, and absolutely insane. The other nice thing is the smaller the niche you pick, the more meaningful every single, small thing that you get, right? So you're like in one media publication, not very meaningful if you're trying to be the world's biggest travel influencer. Very meaningful if you want to be, the healthcare brand marketing expert.
Yes.
So you that, like, picking that smaller field is really, really helpful. And yes, there's downsides, and I also want to be clear, way more downsides for women than men. I
Yeah.
think, Jake, you probably know that my wife, Geraldine, is an author, notable like food and feminism writer. She's,
Award winning, by the way.
yeah, yeah, James Beard Award winning.
Yeah, just a little James Beard Award, just a little one.
Yeah,
That's pretty
her
cool.
last book was a national bestseller. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
lots of great stuff. But also, there's downside to that. Like, you can imagine that, she's been called the C word by just so many people on the internet. And, we've had to worry about, like, hey, did this guy who threatened to burn down our house, like, does he know our address? Like that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Right. Yeah.
There's negative externalities and associations with that. It's not all fun and games. And my heart goes out to people who are trying to do that. I will say, um, it's gotten, I feel like the intensity of that world has diminished a little bit. So
That's good to hear.
yeah, it's not as bad. I would say, if you're a woman, I would generally stay off Twitter. That
Yeah.
attracts the most aggressive forms of this. But
Hmm.
yeah, other places on the web, generally better.
Yeah. Wow. Um, so to wrap up, I just want to say personally a huge thank you for supporting our students, for giving them access to Spark Toro, for sharing your knowledge and how you'd use this. I mean, it's incredibly generous of you and Spark Toro to do that. And I can't stress enough. This class really, for me to teach, takes a community, and it's leaders like yourselves that'll dedicate some time to hop on and share that and share access and do all this kind of stuff. So thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
my pleasure. I'm thrilled to be able to contribute. I wish everyone out there success with this stuff. And if I can be more helpful, I'm Rand at sparktoro.com.
That is very generous.